Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, so we'll start with some welcoming and opening remarks. We'll hear from our host today about this conversation. We'll have a presentation about the report that is being launched today. I've had a chance to go through the report before the session, and I think it's very, very crucial and very important that report that comes at a timely period. We have COP28 coming up in a few days. We have the Global Refugee Forum coming up right after that. So I think this is a very important conversation to have at this moment about refugee needs, displaced people need in humanitarian situation, especially in the energy sector, looking at things like meaningful participation and inclusion. After the launch of, after the presentation of the report, we'll have a panel discussions, and then we'll go to a Q&A section, and I will close after that. So I'm very, very excited to introduce Mark Gibson from GPA. Will be able to give out an overview about the incredible work they are doing on the energy sector, especially in displacement setting. So without any further ado, I'll pass it on to you, Mark, to kick us off.
Thank you, Now. And good morning, good afternoon to all of you. It's my pleasure just to provide some welcoming remarks to this webinar. Next slide, please, Marianne. This first slide demonstrates the increasing number of displaced people, increasing by 19 million people in 2022 alone. So that almost 110 million people globally, that's 1 in 74 people, are displaced. It's worth noting that 76% of those displaced people are hosted in low to middle income countries. Next slide, Marianne. Although there has been impact from increased activity in regards to energy access, the effort is not keeping pace with the rate of increase in the number of displaced. As this slide shows, as a result, in 2020, 81% of displaced people did not have access to clean cooking, and 94% of displaced did not have access to electricity at the household level. This is an increase of 4% and 5% respectively over the 6-year period from 2014 to 2020. Thank you. Next slide. It would be wrong not to mention the GPA in today's webinar. And I just wanted to quickly show that we are trying to deliver with our partners SDG 7 in displacement settings by working at 3 levels. That's the strategic level, where we're working with the donor group and our steering group. We're also at the operational level, where the GPA coordination unit is supporting the working areas and programs noted below. And we also, at the implementation level, have the Humanitarian Energy Exchange Network, where field colleagues come together to share stories, impacts, and also ask questions to support one another in the delivery of this program. As you can see, the working areas that the GPA coordination unit are focused on are around planning coordination, policy, innovative financing, capacity building, and data. And we're also running 4 programs: the Decarbonising Humanitarian Energy Multi-Partner Trust Fund, also known as THEA. We're also working with IKEA on the roads maps to energy access and displacement settings, also known as READS. We're also working with the FCDO and Carbon Trust on the Transforming Humanitarian Energy Access Programme, also known as THEA. And we're also working with the IKEA Foundation, the Last Mile Climate and UNEP on catalysing energy policy and partnerships for climate action at the last mile. This is a very sort of brief overview of where we are. And if you'd like to know more, you don't know us that well, please go to our website, and there's more details towards the end of this presentation on where you can get more information. Thank you, Mariana. Next slide. And really, this is a quick slide just to present where we're going with today's webinar. And this is really around about inclusivity in humanitarian energy. This has been developed by the GPA coordination unit, the THEA program and its partners, Chatham House, the Global Refugee Network, and Ashton. And around that, we have 5 pillars, which are around leaving no one behind, and research on this, inclusive investment, mainstreaming humanitarian energy, decarbonizing and reducing costs. And the final one, pillar 3, unfortunately, I can't see because we have I have pictures of Joelle and Niall covering that one, but I'm sure you can read that one for yourself. But please, let me hand it over to colleagues to go through in more details of what this is all about. So thank you, Niall, and thank you for everyone to listening and joining. Many of you probably joining through your lunchtime. This is really appreciated. And please enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mark, for those excellent remarks and for giving us an overview of the global, platform for action and in the incredible work you do in sort of, trying, to push for meaningful inclusion of refugee and displaced people, in both policymaking, in those programming, in those governance of these issues, which I think is very, very important. I'll pass it on now to Joel, who is going to, present the Inclusivity Strategic Outlook. Joel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Niall, and of course, it's a great pleasure and an honor for me to be the one presenting or giving this overview of this wonderful document that the THEA has put together. Of course, without taking so much time, next slide, please. Great. I'll take a few moments to talk a little bit about the THEA project, which is the project that has developed this strategy. And the THEA project is mainly a research project that focuses on putting research, projects together and findings that will provide or feed the sector with high quality research, focusing on lived experience of the displaced people, but also making sure that the outcome of this research is something that will be of course benefit to the sector by giving them the overview of the energy need of the displaced people, how best they can be served or supported, but also how best they can work together with the different actors who are addressing the energy need of people who are really living in very critical setup, mainly displacement setting. And this is a project, it's a 4 years project funded by FCDO. We also focus in 4 countries, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and Bangladesh. We also work so closely with Chatham House, Ashden, and GRN to carry out different activities that will, of course, eventually lead us to the end goal of these projects. And talking of the end goal and objectives, the main goal of the project is mainly transforming the system, transforming the UN system in a way that it will accommodate displaced people or work together with displaced people to address their energy issues. Of course, which is one of the challenges that they face on daily basis, but also making sure that the research findings can also support different projects that are happening, different projects that are taking place in the sector, and ensuring that there are so many alternative or even so many innovative way to address the funding issue that we all know that humanitarian sector is also one of the sector that face a lot of challenges when accessing funding. So how best working with displaced people to ensure that the energy needs is well addressed, more effective, and also sustainable, and also making sure the flow of the money is something that is making sense to support their needs. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the Inclusivity Strategic Outlook that we are launching today, this is a document that, of course, after reflecting a lot and taking a lot of time to assess and see what is really needed to make sure that whatever intervention that is taking place is really effective and sustainable in a way that displaced people can also, make sure that they access energy for both cooking and lighting, but also it's one of the things that can transform their lives. And we thought of different aspects or different areas that need to be really reshaped, especially within the sector, for the energy intervention to be effective. And these are the 6 areas that we are focusing on in this document. So we are focusing on policy, we are focusing on humanitarian workforce, research and innovation is one of the areas that we're focusing on, partnership, systematic change. And talking about systematic change, we are focusing really on the UN and the humanitarian sector, really. And finally, investment. Of course, this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we developed together at the GPA with our partner, Chatham House, Hashden, and also the GRN. We also, we can't, of course, forget to mention the support from our donors to help us make sure that this work is also achieved. So we acknowledge their support, and also Carbon Trust for also being there to support us throughout this process. And the end goal of these documents is to enhance inclusive practices within humanitarian energy policy and programming, and making sure that whatever we are doing is really comprehensive enough and responding to addressing the challenges that displaced people are facing. Next slide, please. Now, speaking of the policy, which is one of the first area that we are tackling in these documents, we have expanded really in detail the 3 points that are highlighted here in terms of representation, in terms of power dynamics, and the value that displaced people can bring into decision making and policy development. We know that policy is one of the things that's really critical in the sector, in the humanitarian sector. And it's really something that's varies, like cut across different aspects, including, different needs of the displaced people, such as education, employment, income, and healthcare, livelihood. So when policy is not really well structured or rooted in the need of the displaced people, taking into consideration the real experience of the people, then there is a way that policy is no longer becoming like a path to easy access to energy, but a barrier. And that's something that we have seen after, doing some research, when developing this document, but also talking to displaced people themselves. We have seen that policy is one of the spaces, or policy making spaces is one of the areas that displaced people, refugees themselves, they don't have access to. So they are really left on the side of complying with whatever outcome, either positive or negative, that comes from the policy, and without much to influence, even if they have things to contribute, they can't really do, because the space is so let's say, protected, and they don't have access to it. So it's really important to mention that policy is one of the areas that displaced people themselves need to have access to. And also, when it comes to accessing those spaces, it's really important also to mention the issue of power dynamics, because we have seen, to some extent, we know that meaningful participation is one of the thing that, or topic that different actors are really pushing hard to ensure that it's something that people can take into consideration. But there is still a big question about how meaningful it is really. Is it really tokenistic? Is something that when displaced people have space to the table, are they really hard? I think that's where the issue of power dynamics comes from. And it's really important. I'll definitely encourage everyone to have a look at the reports to make sure that they can really get the details out of this point that we're highlighting. But also on the side of recommendation, on each point we have some recommendations that we have highlighted in this document. And specifically on the policy aspect, we mentioned that it's really important to engage refugees engage them meaningfully throughout the policy cycle, and making sure that from the beginning, like brainstorming, from development, from implementation, evaluation, they're part of these processes for them to be able to give, contribute to their best, but also making sure that the policy that is taking place is one of the things that is a tool that is enabling displaced people to have access to their rights, and not really playing as a barrier to the rights that they're entitled to. The other thing we really emphasize on that specific point was to develop some feedback mechanism, because to some extent having everyone on the table won't work, but how to make sure that the refugee leadership is really promoted to have access to these spaces, and those who can't make it, then there is a mechanism to collect their views and making sure that their input is also considered. Next slide. Thank you. The humanitarian workforce. This is one of the areas that we also mentioned in these reports. Talking of the workforce, we felt like it's really important to mention the need for the space to be open, especially accommodate those who are coming with displacement background. We know that displaced people, refugees, or other categories of displaced, forcibly displaced person have skills and they are actually resources by themselves. They can contribute to a lot of work that are taking place. However, some of the things that we have seen, such as assumptions and doubt around how best they can deliver, what they can do, is one of the things that hinder displaced people to have some space in the humanitarian setup. But also one of the things is the traditional hiring processes that emphasize more on let's say background or studies and achievement, while knowing that displaced people face really very unique challenges, including loss of papers for them to prove that they're able to do so. It's really important to be flexible on the hiring processes to make sure that displaced people can also be part of this workspace and contribute to the work that is taking place. And in terms of recommendation, we have really recommended for within the humanitarian sector, starting with the humanitarian energy sector, it's really important to at least have a goal of 10% threshold of displaced people included within the workforce of the organization. And talking of 10%, it's 10% at all levels. So from senior management to junior, it's really important to have representation of displaced people being represented there. And also, it's really important also to make sure that the life experience of displaced people is one of the things that people can also have on hiring list or requirements to encourage those with displacement background to also apply and secure more job within the humanitarian sector. And of course, we have more recommendation that we can again get in the paper. Next slide. Talking of research and innovation, we know that the humanitarian energy research is relatively new, a new field of which we still need more content. We still need to know more. We still need to know more about what is happening, what are the needs, how best intervention should be structured and mainstreamed within this setup. However, you'll find that the engagement of forcibly displaced researchers has been limited to data collection, research subjects, and of course, without much influence on the outcome of the data. So it's really important to broaden the sphere or the area where we are engaging refugees when it comes to research and innovations, because they have skills, they have potential. As you can see, on one of the things that we have really mentioned is that there is a growing body of refugee innovators or researchers that are, graduates, scholars that are really coming, and it's really important to utilize these resources. Since they know best they have experienced the displacement, the situation, so they can also be well placed to extend research topics or findings or even innovation that can take place in this setup to address effectively the need of the displaced people. And following that, we recommend that organization should also think of, engaging displaced people, or researchers or innovators who are having different initiatives, to make sure that the idea is not really something that can only remain within their communities, but how best they can also expand and help them replicate whatever is effective within their context, and making sure that the publications of research findings is not really something that can be limited, let's say, to academics areas only, but also other areas, and encourage, like, let's say, small papers like research brief to also be recognized as part of the research findings, and it can also be utilized within the sector. And of course, again, other many recommendations are there. And again, have a look at the document, we'll get more on that. Next slide. Inclusivity and partnership. I think one of the strong points that we are really trying to emphasize on in this document is partnership, mainly partnering with refugee-led organizations. We know that a lot of collaboration happening currently in the sector is happening between government bodies or institutions, international organizations, and there is less or under representations of refugee-led organizations being, partnering with big organizations, or even having a direct connection with the donor community, for example. So this is something that we have seen, and we thought it's really important to mention, because equal partnership and power dynamics is really one of the things that is still needs to be reshaped, and people have to think about what partnership means. When it comes to partnering with displaced people, it's not just something that, because we have seen from our research and conversation with refugee-led organizations, so it's really important to mention that when partnering with a refugee-led organization is something that is so much recommended, because they are based at the ground level, they understand the situation better. But also, apart from that, one of the things that we have seen as an advantage working directly with refugee-led organization is also the cost of the project itself. This said, it doesn't mean like other organizations can't carry out activities, but where feasible and where there is any refugee-led organization operating already, it's really important to building or working with them to address the need of the displaced people, including the energy need of that particular community. And in terms of recommendation, we have really recommended actors to think about always, streamline or making sure that they work closely with refugee-led organizations when implementing different projects that they're taking or implementing within the setup. To some extent, making sure that the refugee-led organization, the one leading the project, because they understand better, but also not limiting the partnership to only, let's say, casual work or work that's happening, but also involving them even in the developing process as equal partner, because they have rights to be considered as equal partner. They're also doing great work. Yeah, again, there's so many recommendations there, and yeah, we can move to another section, sorry. And lastly, we have talked about investment in the sector. And talking of investment, we are really focusing on financing, donation, and all the things that are happening to make sure that different activities can really run and address the energy need of the displaced people. However, we have seen from our research and when developing these projects, we have noticed that the financing, donation, investment, and other acts that are needed financially to carry out different activities are still largely dominated by big institutions and limited, when it comes to knowledge and when it comes to affiliated countries or organizations. So organizational initiatives that are led by refugees are not likely to be supported or get money only because they're not affiliated or connected to any big countries or donor countries. So it's really important to mention that. And one of the things that we are mentioning in this document is that the game of funding in the humanitarian sector is a game of giant and small players. So when you find yourself being a small fish in the sea, so you are likely to be eaten by a giant, a big fish. So that's what happened. And unfortunately, refugee-led organizations are small and they don't really get funding. And there is a huge gap between the donor community and the refugee-led organization, whereby we have a long chain of organization in between. And that's where you find when donations comes, it has to pass through that chain to reach the people themselves. And the effectiveness of that money will no longer be seen the way it was intended because of that long chain. It's really important to break those chains, to break those things, that long line for displaced people to be able to also have access to donation to funding that will also help them to carry out the different activities that they are running. And then one of the things that we said, it's really, really important to also ease the requirements, because sometimes when it comes to donor, let's say, objectives, there's so many requirements behind that. The due diligence processes are not also easy, and they are affecting displaced people or displaced-led organizations to also secure those funding. So it's really important to ease the requirement to also accommodate refugee-led organizations. And of course, we have also suggested to other organizations, including donors, to think of how best to include or to fund a refugee-led organization directly, if not, at least not through a long chain of people, so that their work can also be effective and can run in a way that it brings solution and a long-lasting solution, and not really something that will be there and after the budget, after the project's period, the projects disappear. So those are the few things that we have highlighted in these documents, and I'm so sure that this is something that the sector will definitely benefit from. And I can only wish you best kind of reads, because I know you'll definitely enjoy going through these documents. Yes, talking of one of the things that we also mentioned, we talked about systematic change. And talking of systematic change, we talk about biases and how refugees are really perceived within the sector. We mentioned the issue of conscious and unconscious bias. Here we have the issue of labels and how labels can really change the approach when dealing with people from displacement background. Sometimes I remember from one experience when I used to interact with people at first, before mentioning that I'm a refugee myself, it was really going well until when I say like I'm a refugee, so you find that the approach changed a little bit. So it's really important to say there is still that bias. There is still those labels, names, and terminologies that are still used that still are not really inclusive enough. So it's really important to take good cautious of what is happening, what is needed. And that's a question for reflection for everyone within the organization. Like, do we have this language? What kind of language do you use? Beneficiaries, of course, the word beneficiaries is commonly used within the sector, but also it's something that comes with, some biases in behind, because they are just there like getting support, but probably they can't give anything. So it's really, really important to be aware of those things, and also mentioning that there are things that need to be addressed. I think this is a time for us as organization, as actors, to really take a moment to, reflect a little bit what is happening within our organization, what is happening within our department. Are we really inclusive enough? And of course, it's something that will surprise all of us. Probably at 99%, we are not really inclusive enough when trying to, judge yourself according to these documents. So this is one of the things that we'll definitely encourage again to take a look and try to reflect within the organization what is happening. Next slide. Yes, thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Niall. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joel, for this wonderful presentation of the report. I think we can see very clearly what are the steps that organization can take to be able, to meaningfully include refugee in this very, very important conversation. And I think this is a very solid report that put very actionable recommendation, and it also said very clear deliverable that organization can do to be able to get to that point. And I think it'd be very interesting to hear from the panelists about, their own work in this space instead of trying to bring about, this meaningful inclusion of refugees. It's a term that you hear everywhere nowadays, but, do we really meaningfully include them? Or, it's just, something that we put on our website, because it look good when you talk about meaningful inclusion. So I'm very, very excited to introduce, panel discussions. We have, great, panelists who have done incredible, huge, work in this space. I'll first start by introducing, Dr. Ashok from Ashden, with the CEO, and as well as a chair of, of the London Sustainable Development Network Development Commission. He has a wealth of experience in environmental sustainable development issues in the UK and the Global South. Dr. Ashok is a PhD in renewable energy from Cambridge University and has published, research on the climate feedback process in different spaces. We'll also hear from Marcia Venello from Practical Action, who is the Global Energy Lead. He has about 14 years in energy access and climate action. He worked closely with local and international partners in Africa, South Asia, Latin America to innovate and scale up the impact by building an inclusive market for off-grid electrification, productive use of energy, and clean cooking in development and humanitarian context. We're also very lucky to have Dr. Ajar Alcado, who is the thematic manager for energy at NORCAP. Dr. Ajar Alcado hold a PhD in humanitarian energy and policy. She co-authored the 2022 State of the Humanitarian Energy Sector report and previously worked on the HIT project at Coventry University in the humanitarian field for human appeal in Greek Turkey and Iraq. And then, of course, we'll also hear from Joel, who just presented the report. Joel is the inclusivity lead of the GPA coordination unit at UNITAR, her work cut across energy development, research and communication in development and displacement settings before joining the GPA. She worked in different capacities, including research projects, communication strategies, and project development with originations and institutions such as organizational institutions such as UNHCR Africa Office, Oxford's Research Study Center, the University of Geneva Human Rights Department, and the Refugee-led Research Hub. So I will, let Dr. Ashok kick us off. The work of Ashden, portfolio and climate solution and displacement setting, and your support for refugee-led initiative through the Ashden Award. What are your assessment of the current status of inclusion of the displaced people in humanitarian energy program planning and implementation?
Thank you so much, Neil. And before I go on, it's a very great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this conversation and share a panel with such esteemed fellow contributors, and I can see there are a lot of experts and experienced people on the chat as well. So thank you all for joining us. And Joelle just gone off my screen just about when I was going to say thank you and congratulations to her and all of those who've contributed to this excellent report, fellow members of the Ashton team as well. I think it's an absolutely brilliant report. I mean, it's an extensive and comprehensive assessment of the situation that we face, that people face within humanitarian settings in respect of clean energy access. And the recommendations are very powerful and very compelling. And I think after today's meeting, we'll all be thinking about how we can take those recommendations out to those who need to hear them, and be as persuasive as we can for those changes that are called for about the voice of refugees and displaced peoples within the various areas, from policy through to delivery. So thank you and congratulations to everybody. So in terms of our assessment, is inclusivity enough in the energy access setting in energy access question within humanitarian settings? Self-evidently not, clearly not. We've been working in this area for maybe 5 years now, and the way that we work is through our awards program. And we've had an award for clean energy access in humanitarian settings for a while. So I wouldn't say that we are necessarily experts across all areas or across all questions that are important in this topic, but we have picked up a considerable amount of experience about this particular difficulties and challenges and the kinds of innovation that happen within these settings, and what leads to that innovation, how that innovation can be helped and supported. And by the way, the next award in this program, if this will be for our 2024 awards program, the closing date is on the 25th of January. So if anybody on the call is from or knows anybody who's working on clean energy access in humanitarian settings who they'd like to put forward or put forward yourselves, please go to our website and you can do so. I mean, the thing here is, we've all said this, and it's there in the well articulated in the report. We have a problem with the power structures. We have a problem with top-down solutions that are imposed on communities that are often not suitable and not unsustainable. And this is what people tell us again and again. And we all know that, and this is true in the UK as well, actually, and this is true globally. In order for solutions to the climate emergency, as well as building people's livelihoods and economic development in a fair and just way, in order for them to succeed, just as you said, Neil, at the beginning, you have to work in partnership with people who understand the local context, have the cultural understanding, have got the networks, the social capital available, who can, and also the drive and innovation that is necessary to think new solutions and think creatively about things that will work in their communities. That cannot happen if you parachute in solutions and biases for externally. So that is something that we absolutely need to address. And so what's the result? The result is that there's a chronic lack of entrepreneurship, not desire, not energy, not creativity, but chronic lack of entrepreneurship and businesses within this space, because that inclusivity isn't there. And then the result is, of course, we don't have the levels of clean energy access that is required in these settings for all of those critical reasons, whether it's to support the health sector, to help deliver energy in the domestic setting, to create businesses, to create jobs and livelihoods, and also in the digital space, which we often forget is so important in these settings, are increasingly important around the world for connectivity within communities and creating businesses. You need energy for that. So there are all sorts of reasons why this energy access question is critical, and why we need to solve the inclusivity problem if we're going to make the progress that we need to make.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Those are very, very important insight. I'll move to Marcia from Practical Action. Drawing from the work of Practical Action ensuring the provision of energy in displacement settings, do you think inclusive approaches are needed, and what impact have you observed from your own experience with projects such as renewable energy for refugees?
Thank you, Neil, and yeah, thanks for the GPA team to put together this report, which By the way, I see a lot of energy and humanitarian experts here, but in terms of like typology of people, I think we need to bring this to our boards and CEOs. Ashok is here, the CEO of Ashton, because it's very much not just about energy and thematic areas, it's very much about how our organizations work in this space. So I think all of us, have a duty to do that, to bring this beyond this specific group. I think the reason I was brought to this conversation is really to bring a bit our experience as practical action, more from a programmatic perspective on how, from our experience working in off-grid, clean cooking, and in development and the humanitarian sector, how we look at the wider system and we really try to understand why, almost 700 million people haven't get access to electricity, or almost 3 billion to clean cooking, and a large part of the over 100 million displaced people don't have access to energy either. And really our experience doing system mapping, and that's what we do, like we really try to understand the systems of what is not working there, why those people are left behind. And I'd say we recognize a number of the points that you found there, from of course, the lack of representations of those groups, displaced people in this case, among organizations running programs. I think also about the approaches organizations often have, which tend not to capture people's needs and often start from solutions rather than from understanding the needs. I think overall, there is a lack of understanding of those needs in terms of energy needs and priorities, really, and very much a lack of granular data, really, to understand what are the social demographic groups, even within the displaced community, which is made of people which are better off, people who live in extreme poverty, people with disabilities, women and girls, elder people. So all those groups need to be, understood in their specificities. And I think there is also a limited willingness to engage with groups which are in fact hard to engage with, from both in humanitarian space, but also from the sort of private sector. We as an organization, but also other organizations, try to sort of bring into the humanitarian space. And I think this is one of the lessons we've learned in the last years, trying to pioneer approaches with market-based in humanitarian, is that if you just leave it there, the left behind, some of the extreme poor people, some of those most vulnerable people within the refugee groups will not have access because the market will go for the low-hanging fruit. So as an organization, we need to be very deliberate in finding ways to include those in the market aspects, if you look at market. So how we do that? First, we need to start really from understanding the needs and priorities, as I said, through surveys, designing properly surveys. The design is really important. And understanding what are the barriers that keep those people from access energy. Affordability, but not just affordability, also other type of barriers. For example, the fact that refugees might not have the papers, the documentation to access certain type of market mechanism, for example. Or someone with a disability might not be even be able to go to the shop where those products can be sold. So those are type of specific examples we need to look at. Low level of the education or lack of awareness of those technologies. But a number of financial and non-financial barriers. So, as I say, what we do, so we try to do those surveys, then we look at the markets, but we bring together in this sort of approaches we do, we bring in the refugees' perspective. In practice, we organize workshops where we have the refugees, market actors, government, humanitarian organizations, all in the same place to identify where are the barriers to unlock. And then we try to identify and design interventions which support the demand. So what type of subsidies they might need, for example, those especially the poorest refugees, to access a certain type of technologies, what type of other mechanisms to help them reach. But also we look at the supply side. I mean, a couple of specific examples from the program we've been running in Rwanda, Renewable Energy for Refugees, for the last 5 years. We're now in the second phase. And just to say, the first phase brought energy to about 50,000 Congolese refugees in Rwanda. Well, I think a couple of examples to share. One was looking at the demand side. So the development of a revolving fund. So because typical financial mechanisms, even as pay-as-you-go, weren't really working with some of those refugees because they didn't have the financial credits passed, they didn't have really the ability to engage with the fixed term payments. So helping them setting up a revolving fund was really, a change maker to get them the finance to get there. But then also on the supply side, helping some of the companies to get into those spaces that otherwise they wouldn't look at. So setting up some de-risking funds very much and sort of concessional loans to help them get into those technologies. For example, setting up pellets manufacturing in the camps. and also supporting local entrepreneurs, refugee entrepreneurs, to access energy to run businesses. And yeah, I will stop here for now. I mean, I can give a bit more details when in the next round if you have time. Thanks, Neil, back to you.
Thank you, Marcia. I'll move to Dr. Gerald Alcado from NORCAP quickly. One of the things Gerald talked about in the report, during our presentation is, including displaced people in the workforce. And I think this is very important because oftentimes when you talk about this aspect of inclusion in the humanitarian world, organizations feel like they just need to set up advisory board for refugees or of refugees. And I think, of course, it's important to have those boards that can advise on refugee issue, but I think it should be more than that. We need to have refugees actually and displaced people, being part of your workforce. And I was just wondering if you can provide example of initiative your organization has in place to encourage the long-term inclusion of displaced people, such as, including them in your workforce. Over to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely great question. Firstly, brilliant report. Was reading it at 7 a.m. this morning and thoroughly kind of could see how actually we have to position ourselves or reposition ourselves a little bit better in NORCAP and how we think about inclusivity as a whole. And there's so many ways at NORCAP we look at inclusivity, whether at the project level, at the expertise and capacity level, or the partnerships level. But your question is really, really relevant because what we're seeing more and more is that not only are we interested in including, a diverse set of skills and people who are, national based, what we haven't actually got to is how to include refugees specifically. But I think just looking at the kind of the more project level kind of work that some of our experts do, and as you know, we have about 80 plus experts on our pool and 45 on mission just in 2023 in 26 countries. So we have quite a big pool of people, and a lot of them would be national. Some of them would be national experts as well, working with the different agencies. And one thing that's been really interesting to see. And again, we don't position ourselves as from the inclusivity lens. Sorry, I can't even say the word today. But what we can do is look at how inclusivity has kind of a greater part of and a share of a lot of the work of our NORCAP colleagues actually in the field. And just one pretty basic example, actually, just coming back from Mozambique recently, what we did see was with the IOM project, one of our experts working in Mozambique with IOM and a partnership with Innovation Norway, actually, and NORCAP, was that they included a host of energy ambassadors at the field level. And these were actually directly paid by and included in the project. And if I remember correctly, since 21, they've been doing this. And the project is all about kind of clean cooking initiatives, energy saving, and working in resettlement sites in Mozambique. But what they had done was trained 15 energy ambassadors which from the different communities, and they were IDPs mainly in this project. And they'd basically, these ambassadors not only had obviously, their role was very extensive, which was really, really interesting because they were, doing community and capacity development, right? They were listening into the needs of the IDPs and the refugees and the host communities. They were explaining what, different energy access projects or services, were available, and they had reached 3,000 people. And I think this is one of the really excellent examples that in ways we can innovate is obviously this is a capacity building initiative, but it's also giving back to the IDP, the refugee, allowing them to voice what their opinion or their need is, not even opinion, right? In terms of energy access needs specifically, and productive use of kind of energy and the opportunities that they need. So I think that was one example. It's, I can't specifically say that out of the 85 people on our pool at the moment, we have X amount of refugees or displaced people, but we are working towards the national perspective, right? Making sure that, national perspectives are of the energy experts are included. Another thing that actually NORCAP is doing is the Female Accelerator Program. And I think for me, this is, the special kind of inclusivity bit, because this is the gender inclusivity. This is where we bring in, national energy experts who are female, who are leading on producing and implementing different energy projects in the different countries that we're working on. And I think that's two kind of really interesting examples. I could give you 15 different examples of where our experts have worked and kind of what they actually do. Whether it's from the livelihoods or resilience bit, or working specifically on greening. But I think those are two really interesting examples from the inclusivity bit. But I certainly learned a lot from this report, and I think it's something that we need to kind of start using a lot better, quite frankly. But I know there's a question coming up, and I feel like that's where I feel it's more provocative, and we need to question ourselves actually at the agency level as well. So I'm going to stop there because I know we're running out of time.
Thank you for sharing those very, very important perspective and the incredible work your organization does. I think as you can see from your own work, I think of course listening to the voices of these people is very important. Trying to find ways to ensure they are the driver's seat at the local level, at the national level, can help in ensuring that that the solution we put forth, are effective and impactful to their life. I'll come back to you, Joel. I think one of the things that people feel is very important is the why. I studied in high school will tell finding the why in algebra is very traumatic. So Joel, I was wondering if you can break down the why for us here. Why is it important, for this issue of inclusion of displaced people, in the humanitarian intervention approaches?
Thank you so much for that question. I think that's really one of the very important questions and I'm happy to answer. I think the why behind everything and the effort and this report itself really is I think the reason that the current situation. So displacement kind of landscape and shape is really changing. Initially, it was more of a temporal situation. People will be there for a few months and then they'll be, sent back to their homelands or going back to somewhere else where they can continue their lives. Nowadays, it's no longer the situation. The scenario is that people are spending more than decades in displacement contexts. And those, to some extent, there are those who were born there and their life is just that set up. So talking of why is, we are really, I think one of the things everyone will agree with me on this call is that we are trying to bring solutions that will be long-term, solutions that will respond effectively and not really trying to do something that eventually after 2 years, the solution is no longer available. I think that's one thing, like sustainability, because when having displaced people part of this conversation, part of the design, implementation, everything that is needed, then they're bringing like very valuable inputs that will drive towards sustainable response, towards a response that are very effective in addressing their needs. So that's really the why. Like we are looking at something that is long-term. We know that the landscape, the problems in the world, actually it's really changing from now and then. Now we are now globally talking about climate change. And climate change means more funding needed to address these issues. Then there'll be that shift from energy need to, no, people are talking about climate change, they can only support climate change projects. So we'll eventually forget that need. So it's really important to address the energy needs of the displaced people in a more effective way. We are addressing this cooking, let's say, needs, and then we are done. Like people can continue. There is that long-term solution rather than something that will keep on relying on funding to continue. I think that's the why, really.
Thank you, Joel, for breaking that down for us. We're running behind schedule, so I'll ask us to keep our response to 1 minute max in the next pace, because I would really like to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions toward the end. At least pick 2 or 3 questions. So I'll come back to Dr. Asha Oksina from Ashden. I think Ashden has done a lot of great work in trying to sort of ensure that there's a clear flow of funding to refugee-led organization through the award that you mentioned earlier. I was wondering, why do you think, this approach of, giving funding directly to refugee-led organizations is very important? Are there any strategies in place to ensure that investment flow directly to refugee-led initiatives that are on the front line of trying to find solutions to these issues?
That's a terrific question, Neil, and I'll try and be brief. So why it's important, I think we've discussed this, and it's covered in the report. But this issue of whether the investor community really understands the opportunities and challenges of investing in refugee-led organizations, and whether the donor community is ready to help de-risk some of that investment, because that's what's required for a lot of that private investment to flow. I think a lot of that depends on the understanding of the context. I'll give you an example. So our most recent winner of this particular award, Yusafi Green in Kakuma refugee camp, so clean cooking stoves combined with reforestation. We brought Brian from Yusafi Green into London, of course, for the awards, and to meet with people at the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, to meet with investors. And so many of those people were unaware of the context in which Yusafi Green is working. And the presumption is it's too difficult, it's complex. Can we trust the communities to have the resilience to be able to create durable solutions? Will this entrepreneurship fade away as people move on to other things and so on? And as a result, there's a reluctance to invest because of that lack of understanding. And when the investment is coming through, it's got a high risk premium associated. And so one of the things we really need to do, and one of the things that we're trying to do through our awards process, is not just the awards, but creating those connections with some of those actors in this space, both those who are using development finance, ODA, so UK departments, for example, but also the wider private investment community, to get a better understanding of the situation on the ground, and then develop collaborative partnerships that are prepared to take a bit of risk, are prepared to fail, but prepared to learn and evolve over time, to sort of open up that sector. Because unless we do that, unless we challenge that attitude towards risk and this idea that it's too hard and refugee communities are too dependent on outside support, unless we kind of challenge that cultural understanding and improve it, then we're going to struggle to get the finance flowing. So it's bringing people together. It's so important. That's what we try to do. It anyway. Ashton, sorry, it's probably longer than a minute. I do apologize.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I really hope that it's something many organizations can pick in trying to channel funding directly to refugee-led organization. I think this is something very important, because this refugee-led organization need that funding aspect to be able to do the work they do. I'll come to Marcia from Practical Action. Looking at that aspect of inclusivity, what do you think could be an effective way to foster, inclusive approaches in the energy sector, and any strategies, you think could be particularly impactful? If you can just, wrap that up in a minute, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, we heard examples from a number of us, so I think there are things already working. There's been demonstrated that those should be scaled up. So let's not waste time. Let's scale those up. I think some of the findings from this report and what we're pushing still need some sort of demonstration. For example, I'd be really curious as representing an organization to see how we can, engage more with some refugee in our, organization running program, and really find the best way, be very pragmatic of how we can do that. This is almost a request to the GPA, so tell us how we can do this better, and show us how can this work. I think we need to demonstrate this to, the wider organization like the UN, UNHCR, and also the donors, that this can actually work to reach their objectives. It's not just a nice way to include, but actually can bring to success of the programs. I think that's very important. And I think I would push again for strategies, approaches which are more based on like thinking about the whole system, starting from understanding of the needs of people. I still see a lot of those large organizations pushing solutions, technologies before thinking about what are people needs and how people can access them. I have a number of specific recommendations about market and type of funding injections and market-based models, but for those ones, I will share a report we launched through the Transforming Energy Access end of this week, looking specifically at market mechanisms for extreme poor people, including people in displacement. So I'll stop here for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. I'll come to Joel very quickly for 30 seconds, if that is possible. The report is, of course, a great step. But I think, the next step is trying to get organization, be able to put it into practice. And, are there any strategies in place at GPA for ensuring practical implementation and impact regarding the inclusion of displaced people in the humanitarian energy initiatives?
Yes, in 30 seconds, try it. So, of course, the GPA is really working hard to making sure that this is not just something on paper. So we have really tried our best within the GPA coordination unit to have 30% of the staff or people working from having a displacement background. Of course, the contract was based on the project that was happening, mainly probably short term, but at least at some point that target of 30% of the entire team was with displacement background. That's really a very practical thing that we are really pushing, and we are continuing pushing, but also we hope that with our members and people that we work with closely, we can continue encouraging them to do so. And aside from that, regarding this particular reports, our plan is to extend on each of the sections that I covered, really extend further on those, because this is just a kind of introductory reports, but we'll keep on extending on each of these 6 sections that I highlighted. So hopefully these are the things that will keep on, bringing a lot of positivity within the humanitarian sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel. And before I asked the last question to Dr. Ajay Alcado, I'd like to appreciate our very patient audience for your time today. We're a few minutes past time, but thank you so much for being here. While I welcome Dr. Ajar, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll be able to check them right after this. Or if you like to ask your questions in maybe 10 seconds or 15 seconds, you can raise your hand and I'll try to come to you as well. Dr. Ajar, I think one thing that is very important in this entire conversation is that aspect of co-responsibility. Everyone has a role in moving this, from word to actions. Your organization have a lot of influence, within the humanitarian energy system. But looking at your role, how do you see your organization's responsibility in fostering an inclusive approach within the energy sector? But also, what do you think others can do as well, especially looking at that aspect of co-responsibility that everyone has a role to do in trying to move this forward to the next step? If you can wrap that up for us in a few seconds, that would be great. Thank you so much.
That's going to be really hard. So you're being very ambitious with your question there. But I think, genuinely speaking, we are in a prime position at NORCAP. We have, 10 different partners, most of which are UN agencies. So project development with our partners, that is more inclusive of the displaced person, whether in the job market or whether, in the innovation space or whether, in the investment space. I think that's what we can push, right? So we can make sure that we're pushing at the partner level this development on inclusivity. I think another one is capacity building and reframing the discussion with the experts. As I said, we hold the bigger share of the experts in the sector, and therefore we can, upskill and capacity build our experts on what inclusivity means, right? We're already doing this a bit with our CEA colleagues on the community accountability and engagement. And we've already started to really push this topic from the inside out, right? So we really want to make sure that our experts, when they're going out, it's not just a top level inclusivity, it is every single level of their project, from, the design phase all the way to the implementation. And then we get them out of there. The experts need to leave, and whoever from the you know, the refugee or IDP or host communities are staying behind. We need to make sure their capacities are built. So I think those are the two big ones, right? Reframing the discussion as well is extremely important. And I think this report is giving and will give us the opportunity in 2024 to reframe this discussion and to really unpack what we're really doing on the inclusivity front and, you know, how we are achieving this. So I think you've just set us a higher standard at NORCAP. Thank you, GPA, again, for setting that standard higher for us, because I think this is another way that we can hold ourselves actually accountable in terms of how we were including the different populations. Obviously, the final bit is we work with different policymakers and local authorities as well, and community-based organizations via our experts and via our different teams. And this is also another way in. So we have ample opportunity here. I think we just need to put a plan together and work together, quite frankly, to do it. So hopefully that's insightful enough, really, from our side.
Thank you so much for that. No questions have come through so far in. So I think that means, you know, we had a very, very, you know, solid discussions with very, you know, actionable point to move this conversation forward. You know, maybe in just 1 or 2 seconds, I'll ask this to all of you, and you can go in the order of, you know, Ashton will have, you know, we'll have practical action, we'll have NORCAP, and then we'll have GPA. In 2 to 3 words, what is inclusion to you and your organization?
Oh, that's an impossible question. In 2 to 3 words, it's effectiveness, because it delivers effectiveness. It's justice, because it is, somebody I think earlier talked about a rights-based approach, so it's justice. And it's partnership, because we're not going to be able to do this alone. We're only going to be able to do this if we work together. But you put me on the spot there. I need more time to think of 3 words.
I think Ashok said it. I mean, effectiveness, justice, and really, you know, it's appropriateness of the interventions. You know, unless you bring inclusivity, you are not going to be effective, successful, and you're not going to scale those up properly, and you're not going to include everyone. So it's essential, I think, to all of our work. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really tough act to follow there, but I would say development is a big one. I think also collaboration from the partnerships perspective. And I'm going to use 2 words here: capacity building. So I cheated, but I hope that's, yeah, I think just to add to what's already been said.
I can't agree more. I think I totally agree with the panelists. And of course, just on top of that, I think I can just add 1 word, which is being realistic. Like, when you go real, we work with the community, because they'll bring that real life with them, real reality. So yeah, sorry for just giving 1, but I echo what they've said.
Thank you so much. I really love the justice and partnership, you know, word. I think those are very, very powerful words in trying to, you know, think big about what actually inclusion is. You know, development, you know, capacity building, effectiveness, and also being real, you know, realistic, of course. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your incredible wealth of knowledge with us all today. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you, you know, to GPA for putting this together. You know, in the slide that, can we go back to the next slide, please? Yeah, those are, you know, ways you can keep in touch with, you know, and maybe, you know, continue this conversation. You know, there's a LinkedIn group there where you can connect with, you know, different experts in this field. You know, there's a newsletter that I encourage you all to sign up to. And please, you know, if you use Twitter, which is now called X, you know, follow GPA there, as well as the email addresses there. Next slide. The next slide. Okay, I think that is the last slide. So I'll just welcome Mark to give us the closing remarks. And thank you again, everyone, for these important conversations, and to our audience as well.
Great, thank you. I'll keep my closing remarks very short, given that we are overrun. But just thank you for everyone for joining, listening. Big thank you to our panelists and their insightful thoughts on this inclusivity drive, if you'd like to call it, that's been pushed from the GPA and THEA partnership. And a big thank you for now to supporting us today and talking us through this webinar, and wishing everyone that's still on board to a very good Monday afternoon, and thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.